Hey guys, today we're going to be going through a NOCTI POS, and that is understanding plant physiology and the processes of photosynthesis, cellular respiration, translocation, and transpiration. Okay, so this PowerPoint you're going to have a video of me doing it, and then there's also going to be videos within the PowerPoint that'll help you if you don't understand a process the way I explain it. There's a note sheet that goes along with the PowerPoint, so you should work on that as we're going through this. If at any point you need to stop the video or go back, feel free to do that so you have time to get all your notes complete. So we'll answer all these questions up there on the board. Let's start with photosynthesis. So you can list the inputs and outputs of photosynthesis. So what do you need for photosynthesis to happen? And then what do you get out of photosynthesis? If you went to elementary school, you'll learn this, okay? Maybe in a more simplistic form, but you probably have a good understanding of that. Go ahead and write down the ones you know, and the ones you don't know, make sure you study those. So the inputs, water, carbon dioxide, not monoxide, carbon dioxide, CO2, sunlight energy, and nutrients. Although the nutrients doesn't really show up, I want you to know that that's important for photosynthesis. Outputs, sugar, glucose, fructose. Those are the simplest form of sugar. If you've heard of the glucose before, maybe you know someone with diabetes and needs insulin. Oxygen, O2, and water. Okay, so what that looks like in an equation, and I want you to commit this to your memory. This is an important equation, and if you know this one, then you're going to know the next thing we talk about. So that's good. So we got 6 CO2, 12 H2O, sunlight and nutrients. And that equals C6H12O6, that's glucose, that's the simplest form of sugar, C6H12O6, 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 okay? We've got O2, 6 of those, and 6 H2O, okay? If you are in chemistry and know how to balance an equation, this is a balanced equation. What is on this side is on this side. We didn't delete any H's or any O's or any C's. The same amount of matter exists on both sides. We just are switching it around and putting it into the form that is going to be effective. So that's CO2, H2O, and sunlight. Those are the inputs. And then we get glucose, oxygen, and water. Okay. Any questions on that? Go ahead and consult me. Photosynthesis, the definition of photosynthesis is the process by which a plant turns the light energy from the sun into chemical energy in the form of sugar. If you look at the diagram up here, you can see that happening. There's a little tiny sun, and then it's shining down on this little thing called a chloroplast. Chloroplasts are green because they have a chlorophyll pigment inside them that reflects that green light, okay? You can see CO2, H2O coming in from this organelle down here, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay, the organelle taking in the light, and then what's coming out is our sugar and our O2, and there is a little bit of water that comes out too. That's not in the diagram. So that's the definition of photosynthesis. Make sure you write that down. There are 2 stages to photosynthesis: the light reaction and the CO2 fixation. The light reaction harnesses light energy made possible through the chloroplast pigments. So those are the green pigments. They are going to be capturing the sunlight. They're like little mini solar panels inside your cell. And they're collecting that sunlight, and that light enters the chloroplast and chlorophyll pigments and is absorbed. So that's the light reaction in its simplest form. We could go into more detail if you wanted to, okay? Then CO2 fixation happens. CO2 fixation is when CO2 enters through the stoma, okay? The stoma or stromata, it's simple or plural, That's an opening on the undersides of leaves. So they have an opening that allows gases to exchange, and we'll talk about that a little more when we get to another term. Okay, so there's the stoma, and the CO2 enters into the plant. It combines with hydrogen, which is in our water molecules, to produce glucose and fructose, which are our simple forms of sugar that fuel plant growth. Okay, they fuel plant growth. They don't make plants grow. We'll get into that when we talk about our next thing. They will combine and form more complex forms of sugar. Okay, sucrose you may have heard of. That's a more complex. There's more atoms present in that one than C6H12O6. There's going to be more. All right, and then they can be further processed into starches. What's your favorite starches in American? Potatoes. Okay, so that's a really complex storage. They go down in the ground. They make a potato, and that's a energy source for that plant. And then cellulose. When we talk about cell structure, the cell wall is made out of glucose. That's a very hard, rigid cell wall. Essentially, every little plant has a skeleton in each cell that it has, because cellulose is very rigid and provides strength for the plant. Okay, so those are the two stages of photosynthesis, how it works in its simplest form. I don't think you'll need to know any more details than that for Nocti. All right, let's get into cellular respiration. Some people just call it respiration, so don't get that confused. It can be called either. If I tell you a little hint, you should be able to do really well on this on your note sheet. Take a guess. The photosynthetic equation and the cellular respiration are simply the opposite of each other, minus one little fact. Okay, so your inputs and outputs, switch them, and then you have a pretty good start to finding out these inputs and outputs. So inputs of cellular respiration are actually the outputs, exactly the outputs of photosynthesis. So what did we get from photosynthesis? We got sugar in the form of glucose and fructose, we got oxygen, and we got water. Easy peasy. Okay. Our outputs are going to be water, H2O, which is one of the inputs of photosynthesis, carbon dioxide, which is also one of the inputs of photosynthesis. And then here's the one that's a little different. Instead of sunlight, we have something called ATP energy. ATP energy is the energy that is actually what fuels growth and what fuels energy in the world. Okay, so humans will cellular respirize. They will not photosynthesize because we don't have little green organelles that capture sunlight on our bodies or in our cells. We do cellular respirize. So we take in the form of glucose or fructose from something we eat, sugar, carbohydrates, things like that. And our body cellular respirizes that into energy in the form of ATP. Okay? And that one, if you know that, then you can simply go and do the reverse of this equation. If you know the photosynthetic equation, you can do the cellular respiration change, or the cellular respiration equation with one little change, and that's sunlight, changing that to energy. Okay, so you flip-flop and you change. So for cellular respiration, we need one C6H12O6, which is our glucose molecule, our food. We have 6O2 and 6H2O, and that converts over to 6CO2, 12H2O, and ATP, which is our usable form of energy. Okay, that's cellular respiration. Cellular respiration happens within an organelle called the mitochondria. It takes place within this organelle that is present in both animal and plant cells. And all living cells respire. Okay, that's how you would say respiration and respire. In order to use energy and live. Okay, if I want to be able to keep a constant temperature with my body. Okay, 90, what is it, 8.6. I have to use energy to keep my body temperature. If I want my heart beating, I have to use energy. So everything that fuels our systems and our functions is done through cellular respiration. Cellular respiration really doesn't have enough credit because without cellular respiration, photosynthesis is giving us a form of energy that we can't use. Okay, so cellular photosynthesis gets all the glamour, but cellular respiration does the work. Okay, couple questions I want you to answer. How is the energy released? What are 3 specific examples of what is released energy is used for in plants? And what are the byproducts of cellular respiration? You should have a place to answer those on your note sheet. Go ahead and do that. You can pause me and then do that right now. Hint, use the formula to help you. All right, this just compares the two, photosynthesis and cellular respiration. It tells you what's used, so what's the inputs on the top, and then what's the outputs, what's produced, the second row down. The middle row asks where does it occur, so chloroplast is where photosynthesis happens, mitochondria is where cellular respiration happens. What does it? Plants are the only thing that photosynthesize. Without plants, we would not be living. We wouldn't have sugars to convert. In cellular respiration, animals and plants both can cellular respirize. Do you need sunlight? Yes, for photosynthesis. No, for cellular respiration, which brings us to our next point. Actual plant growth, actual human growth is fueled by cellular respiration. Okay, it takes place primarily at night when photosynthesis is shut down in plants. So when the sun is out, the plant's busy photosynthesizing, making energy, or making, glucose, sugars. All right, and then at night, it shuts down and cellular respiration will take it over and it'll start converting those sugars into usable energy, ATP. There's a YouTube video there. If you don't like how I explained it, click on that, go through that YouTube video. Temperature influences metabolism. So if it's really, really hot, like 100 degrees, it's supposed to be this week, summertime right now, I'm making curriculum. Plants are going to metabolize a lot, whereas when they're in their optimal temperature, 60, 70, a little bit of 80, they're going to be metabolizing pretty quick. When it gets down to cooler temperatures, 40 degrees, metabolism slows again. So temperature is very important for metabolism. All right, transpiration, there's a YouTube video there. We're going to go through and I'm going to talk to you about transpiration, but you can go through that video and it'll give you definitions and things like that. You're going to answer questions down here. I will talk you through transpiration and exactly what transpiration is. So listen carefully. Transpiration is like evaporation. And if you know what evaporation or the definition of evaporation is when water vapor moves out of the Earth's surface into the atmosphere. Okay, so take that definition, switch Earth's surface as and say plants. So taking water vapor from plants into the atmosphere is transpiration. So a plant's growing, we talked about something called a stomata. It's an opening where the CO2 moves into the plant for photosynthesis to happen. Along with that CO2 moving in and out, oxygen moves out because plant photosynthesis is done. Okay, so that air exchange also takes with it water vapor. Okay, so there's moisture in that leaf. Obviously, the plant needs moisture in order for photosynthesis to happen. So that moisture will turn into water vapor and get pulled out of the plant through the stomata. Okay, so that's one type. The other type is cuticle transpiration, and that gets pulled out of the waxy substance on the top of the leaves. If you ever notice, the top of the leaf has sort of a waxy covering versus the bottom of the leaf. And that's simply its sunscreen per se to keep it protected from transpiration. But transpiration still does happen out of the cuticle, not as fast as the other two, which are openings in the plant. The lenticule is an opening for gas exchange on stems of plants. So transpiration can happen out of that location as well. Okay, so transpiration again, that is when water gets pulled up out of the plant into the atmosphere. It is a natural process. It's not bad, but if it happens faster than water can get up through the plant, then it causes wilting. So there's a wilting point that you sort of have to manage. If you don't water your plants and they can't pull up enough water and there's more water leaving the plant than not leaving the plant, you're going to have your wilting problems. The next topic we're going to talk about is translocation. Translocation is moving things within the plant. Okay, so you have a picture on this. Photosynthesis happens where? Leaves, good, okay. Any green part of the plant, if the stem is green, it has chloroplast, it can photosynthesize. So this one, all of this is photosynthesis happening during the day. The leaves are making things, so they need water. So water is translocating from the roots up into the leaf. And then once photosynthesis is done, we have a byproduct of glucose, which is going to get translocated somewhere. Okay, it might go up to this bud that's going to end up growing, or it might go down here in the roots to be stored. But translocation is really important. Translocation happens through the vascular tissues. So when I say vascular tissues, think about tissues that run through the plant that conduct things and move things. If you think about the human body, think of them as veins. In the leaf, we actually do call them veins, but in the stems and roots, we call them different things. So your tunnels or veins per se that run through the plant, that's vascular tissues that move things in the plant. And they will go all over the place. The one down here that is described is called phloem. It's sort of hard to say, sort of funny looking phloem. The phloem is the tissue that transports food. And when I say food, I mean glucose. So phloem flows food down, phloem flows food down, phloem flows food down is what I like to say. So food is made in the leaves, phloem flows food down to the roots to be stored. Think about our starchy potato. That complex form of glucose is a starch. Okay, so phloem is a vascular tissue, and that moves food throughout the plant. The next one to talk about is water and minerals. So in order for plants to get nutrients, they have to be dissolved in water. So we say water, but we also mean water and minerals because those minerals are diluted into the water as they're getting sucked up through the roots. So we have xylem, which is another funny word. It looks like exlem, but we say xylem. Xylem transports water and nutrients up. Okay, so the plant is going to translocate water from the roots where it's absorbed. This picture here, it's roots, it's absorbed up through the stems, it's going up and then up into the vein of the leaf. And then you can see the picture of the water getting sucked out through the stomata. That would be the process of transpiration happening right there. Okay, there are lots of water properties, cohesion, tension, transpiration that go into moving water through the plant. That doesn't actually take the plant energy to move water. It does require energy for it to move the food in the phloem. But water, pretty much the properties of water move it throughout the plant, which makes it pretty efficient. All right, any questions on that? Make sure you see me. That's all I have for you on cellular respiration, photosynthesis, translocation, and transpiration. There are added videos on this PowerPoint. Make sure you fill out your note sheet and know all of these terms for NOCTI. They are going to be on your test. I hope you enjoyed this video. Ask me if you have any questions.